In just hours, at exactly 12:30 p.m. today, Rachel Reeves will stand up in Parliament and potentially detonate the biggest property tax explosion the UK has ever witnessed. What she's about to announce could fundamentally transform how every single property owner in Britain pays tax on their home. The whispers coming out of number 11 Downing Street last night suggest that what's coming isn't just a minor adjustment to property taxes, it's a complete revolution that could see millions of homeowners facing thousands of pounds in new annual charges. And here's the terrifying part. If you own property worth more than a certain threshold, you might be about to discover that your home has just become the government's new cash machine. The Chancellor has been backed into a corner that nobody saw coming just weeks ago, after her dramatic U-turn on income tax last Friday, when her own Labour MPs revolted against breaking their manifesto promise. She's now scrambling to find £22 billion from somewhere else. And property owners have just become the primary target. Make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to Property Reporter to stay ahead of all the latest UK property, economy, and housing news. Because after today, everything could change. The numbers Rachel Reeves is staring at this morning paint a picture of economic disaster that demands immediate action. With inflation still burning at 3.6%, food prices surging nearly 5%, and economic growth practically flatlining, the Treasury's calculations show they need at least £20 billion just to keep the country's finances from collapsing. The Institute for Fiscal Studies has warned that without dramatic intervention today, the UK's debt spiral could become irreversible. Government insiders revealed yesterday that the Chancellor spent the weekend in crisis meetings, with one senior Treasury official describing the situation as the most challenging fiscal position since the financial crisis. But that's not even the worst part. The government has already committed to removing the two-child benefit cap, which alone will cost £3 billion every single year. Add in the crumbling NHS, the public sector pay demands, and the spiralling cost of debt servicing, now at its highest level in 27 years, and you begin to understand why Reeves has no choice but to raid property wealth. Labour MPs from northern constituencies have been piling pressure on the Chancellor, with more than a dozen writing to her last month demanding she targets wealthy homeowners in London and the South East. One MP reportedly told colleagues at a private meeting, "It's time the property millionaires paid their fair share." The centrepiece of today's announcement is expected to be something property owners have feared for years: a mansion tax that could affect up to 275,000 homes across Britain. Sources close to the Treasury suggest Reeves will announce an annual levy of 1% on all properties valued above £2 million, though there's growing speculation this threshold could drop to £1.5 million to maximise revenue. For homeowners in areas like Kensington and Chelsea, where over a quarter of properties would be caught by the lower threshold, this means an average annual bill of £4,500, on top of everything else they already pay. The truly shocking element is how this tax would work in practice. Unlike council tax, which at least pretends to fund local services, this would be a pure wealth grab going straight to the Treasury. Retired homeowners who bought their properties decades ago, when prices were a fraction of today's values, could find themselves forced to sell because they can't afford thousands in new annual charges from their fixed pension incomes. The Treasury is reportedly considering allowing deferrals until the property is sold, but this would mean the government effectively taking a slice of your home's value when you die or downsize. Property experts are warning this could create a mansion tax trap, where homes just below the threshold see their values surge, while those just above become virtually unsellable. Perhaps even more explosive than the mansion tax is what Reeves is planning for council tax, a system so outdated it's still based on what your home was worth when John Major was Prime Minister. The Chancellor has been privately warning Labour MPs that she's preparing to unleash dramatic increases on higher band properties, with some facing a doubling of their current bills. We're talking about Band G homeowners seeing increases of up to £7,600 per year, while Band H properties could face additional charges of over £9,000 annually. That's not a one-off payment, that's every single year forever. The injustice of the current system has become impossible to ignore. Properties in Westminster's lowest council tax band pay just £948 annually, while identical band properties in Blackpool pay £1,518, despite Westminster homes being worth millions more. The revaluation that's coming could see over 2.4 million properties across England reassessed, with those in London and the South East bearing the brunt of massive increases. Treasury officials have calculated this council tax revolution alone could raise £600 million annually, but at what cost to homeowners who've done nothing wrong except see their property values rise over 3 decades? The complete overhaul of stamp duty that's being finalised represents nothing less than a fundamental reshaping of how property transactions work in Britain. The plan being circulated would abolish stamp duty entirely for buyers and replace it with a new tax paid by sellers on properties over £500,000. This might sound like good news for buyers, but the reality is far more complex and potentially devastating for the property market. Sellers would face massive tax bills at the exact moment they're trying to move, potentially killing chains and freezing the market solid. Even more concerning are reports that the Treasury is considering allowing stamp duty to be spread over several years rather than paid up front. While this might seem helpful, it would create a system where homeowners are permanently in debt to the tax authorities, paying off their property purchase in installments like some kind of government mortgage. The administrative nightmare this would create, combined with the uncertainty over future payment obligations, could make the property market even more dysfunctional than it already is. Richard Donnell from Zoopla has warned that these changes could create a £10 billion revenue gap that would require even more dramatic reforms to fill. The nuclear option that has property owners genuinely terrified is the potential introduction of capital gains tax on primary residences, something that has been considered politically untouchable for generations. Under the plans being discussed, when you sell your main home, you could face a tax bill of up to 24% on any increase in value. For someone who bought a London home for £200,000 20 years ago that's now worth £800,000, that could mean a tax bill of £144,000 just for selling their own home. The implications of this change would be catastrophic for social mobility and the entire concept of property ownership as a route to financial security. Families who've scrimped and saved to buy a home, watching its value grow over decades, would suddenly find that growth isn't really theirs at all. It belongs to the government. The Treasury's own analysis reportedly shows this could raise billions, but it would fundamentally break the social contract that has underpinned British society for generations. Even more worrying, there's talk of imposing a notional levy on unrealised gains payable at death, essentially a double death tax that would devastate inherited wealth. The property market isn't waiting for Reeves to speak. It's already in freefall. Rightmove reported yesterday that asking prices dropped 1.8% this month alone, the largest fall in years, as uncertainty paralyses both buyers and sellers. 1 in 5 potential movers has completely frozen their plans, waiting to see what fresh nightmare emerges from today's budget. House builders are sounding the alarm, with Crest Nicholson, Taylor Wimpey and Barrett Redrow all warning that budget uncertainty has created the worst market conditions in over a decade. The human cost of this paralysis is already visible. Estate agents report viewings down 40%, mortgage applications collapsing, and chains falling apart as buyers and sellers lose their nerve. The property website data shows that in areas most likely to be affected by mansion taxes, particularly London and the South East, transaction volumes have dropped to levels not seen since the financial crisis. Every day of uncertainty costs the economy millions in lost transactions, reduced consumer spending, and frozen investment decisions. But perhaps most damaging of all is the message this sends to international investors. Britain is no longer a safe place to own property. What happens after 12:30 today will determine not just the future of property ownership in Britain, but the fundamental relationship between citizens and the state. If Reeves implements even half of what's being discussed, we're looking at the biggest transfer of wealth from property owners to the government in modern history. The genuinely alarming part is that once these taxes are introduced, they never go away. They only go up. That mansion tax threshold of 2 million today becomes 1.5 million tomorrow. then 1 million, then eventually catches ordinary family homes. For anyone who owns property or hopes to own property, or whose financial security depends on property values, today marks a watershed moment. The smart money is already moving. Wealthy individuals are restructuring their holdings, international investors are pulling out, and those tech entrepreneurs the government desperately needs for growth are booking one-way tickets to Dubai. The question isn't whether Reeves will introduce new property taxes, it's how devastating they'll be and how quickly they'll expand to catch more and more ordinary homeowners in their net. This is Property Reporter, bringing you the news that matters as it happens. Subscribe now to stay informed about what today's budget means for your property, your wealth, and your future. Because after today, nothing in the UK property market will ever be the same again.